Yes.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. And wishing you all a happy Makar Sankranti, happy Pongal, happy Lori, and happy Bihu, depending on wherever you are and whatever you are celebrating. But for us, and for now, it's DTech Dialogues, which we are launching today. And we are thrilled to do that with all of you joining in and giving us so much love and encouragement. So, welcome to Dtech Dialogues. It's truly inspiring to see such a diverse audience of experts from both the technology and medical fields coming together to explore the future of artificial intelligence, AI, and healthcare. But before we begin, let me introduce you to DTech, a platform created with the vision of bridging the gap between tech innovators and all of us healthcare professionals, fostering collaboration to drive meaningful advancements in diabetes technology and therapeutics. One of our flagship initiatives, as you can see on my screen, is Dtechcon, and we are thrilled to announce that 2025 marks the fourth World Congress of Diabetes Technology and Therapeutics. This is not just a conference. It is one of the most sought after global events in diabetes technology right here on our land in India, where experts converge to discuss cutting edge innovations in AI, digital health, and therapeutics. In fact, all previous editions of DTechCon saw registrations close well in advance due to overwhelming demand. The excitement of Dtechcon 2025 is already evident. Within just a week of wrapping up Dtechcon 2024, we had more than 150 registrations already. The same evening, I would say. At its core, DTech is an open portal free for those who are truly enthusiastic about diabetes technology and want to contribute to its evolution. Our goal is to create a collaborative ecosystem where ideas flourish, experts connect, and technology transforms patient care. We look forward to your insights and active participation in shaping the future of diabetes technology together. Without much ado, let me hand over and invite a quick word from Dr. Rakesh Parikh, who has he's a co-founder of DTech Dialogues, DTech, and has initiated DTech Dialogues, and a quick word from him, and then from our DTech founding president, Dr. Banchi Sabu, sir.
Thank you, Purvi, for taking the responsibility to do the Dtech dialogues, which were long awaited. Now we have Bansi sir here, so I won't waste much time. I'll head over to Bansi sir to talk about Dtech and then take it forward from there.
First of all, I'm very much thankful to all of you. Starting and creating this Dtech dialogue, a program where we want to involve and engage many doctors who are really interested in diabetes technology. We know that technology conference, which we are going to do for 2.5 days, where we are going to discuss many newer technology and many experts in field of diabetes technology who will be coming from all over the world, and many national experts will be there. But we also have a limitation of few doctors who are attending. It's maybe 500 or 600, but I think it's a requirement for thousands of the doctors across the country. And for that, we need to have a webinar, and this webinar has to be continued. Continuously, we have to do. So thank you, Purvi, that you had thought of this, you and Rakesh. And today we are very lucky that we today have with us Dr. Santosh Dixit. It was my first time interaction with him, along with Krishna Shashadri and Dr. Amit Day and Alok, and all of them are experts. And along with our DTech founders team with Mithun, Manoj, Rakesh, Amit, I'm sure he will be joining soon. So we all will be here. And I think this program we should continue for multiple times, different topics which we can discuss, because everyone will not able to meet physically face to face, but I'm sure with e-meet, we will able to reach out to thousands of the doctors. Many of them may be in a rural area, but still they will get a lot of benefits. So it's not only on AI, but on many of other aspects like continuous glucose monitoring, on insulin pump, all those things which we do physically, we can also do on a webinar basis also. With this, I once again, thank you everyone who will be joining today, and also thanking our guest speaker, Dr. Santosh Dixit and Krishna Shashadri. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for those encouraging words. And yes, we have two of our founders of Dtech join us too, Dr. Mithun Bhatia and Dr. Manoj Chawla. But I think as we move on with this evening, we will, get their inputs as well. So without much ado, let's move forward with a very, very exciting first start to our Dtech Dialogues. And it gives me immense personal pleasure as well as professional to have an old friend and a really teaming expert in the field of AI and clinical research come and accept this invitation and come to us and decide to speak to all of us at this webinar. And of course, all our other stalwarts, I'm very, very grateful and thankful for them also to have accepted our invitation. So thank you again, Dr. Santosh Dixit, with over 20 years of experience in translational research, including preclinical and clinical pharmacology, drug design and development, regulatory affairs, and public health policy. Presently, he leads a multidisciplinary team at Persistent Systems focused on developing technology innovations for the biomedical R&D ecosystem with focus on AI-related technologies. He is going to talk on leveraging AI for clinical research, and I hand over the stage to him.
Quick check, Dr. Purvi, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Dr. Dixit, yes, able to see.
So, thank you so much. Happy festivities to everybody from wherever you are. It also gives me immense pleasure to sort of kick off the Dtech Dialogues. I think it's a privilege to be amongst all the stalwart diabetologists. My name is Santosh Dixit, and let me clarify, I'm not a medico. But I'm a clinical pharmacologist by research training. So I have a PhD in the field. And therefore, I'm also very privileged to be amongst all the practicing diabetologists. And I'll try to share some experiences of working in the field of clinical pharmacology, and particularly in the last 2 years with reference to how AI is impacting this entire field, right? And as Dr. Purvi mentioned, my parent organization is Persistent Systems, which is a global tech and data company. We are based out of Pune. Personally, I am deeply involved with a lot of diabetes projects at Persistent Systems, whether it is creation of data platforms, doing data analytics, medtech devices, or even recently we have been doing some preclinical research on diabetes. So this is a good homecoming for me. Let me quickly kick off what I would like to cover in the allotted time. So before I go to the actual presentation, let us try to analyze what is the current state of affairs in the field of clinical research. Everywhere, especially post-pandemic, there has been a significant revelation that there is going to be a improved impetus of digital interventions into all kind of clinical research. And therefore, that has also caused more increase in the number of studies. So you are seeing large pipelines. Let me just use my pointer. More and more protocols are becoming complex because now you have digital interventions. Already we are seeing a technology shift all in the direction of AI, Gen AI. And you can see a lot of new study designs coming into picture. You must have heard of words called as new age study designs, adaptive clinical designs, etc. More importantly, there is a need for doing what is called as diversity inclusion. That means you have to include a lot of different strata of the society in clinical trials, because in real life, the drugs are going to reach every strata as possible. So these are the realities. And then if you look at the realities associated with the challenges, there is tremendous data explosion At the same time, because of the increase in the data volume, the human interventions are also becoming very complex. We have more work and less people who can do the clinical trial research coordination, etc. So these are some real problems, not only in India, but all over the world. And then if you look at the impact of these problems, you are seeing that the entire field of clinical research is significantly challenged because of the technology intervention. The time cycles of doing studies are now becoming very complex. Therefore, the cost is going out of hand. And therefore, that is also a reason for a lot of studies being pre-terminated prematurely, etc., etc. But at the same time, we all know the importance of clinical research. Our field cannot do away with clinical research. Well, so despite this background, then what is the way ahead, right? So the way ahead is strategic approach to what is called as enterprise level adoption of AI into clinical research. And I'll explain how AI is impacting clinical research at multiple facets. But any organization, be that as a hospital or a contract research organization, we all know CROs or pharma, they are adopting AI left, right, and center, and particularly this new kid on the block called generative AI at multiple levels, right? So anybody who is thinking of enterprise level organizations, they are talking about 4 or 5 major tenets. So first is, what is the vision of AI adoption, right? So you need to have a very robust strategy. And then it is a cliche, but it is a very important aspect that only good data will allow you to do good AI. That means there is tremendous impetus on improving your data platforms, data standards, data collection systems. The third and fourth part is where a lot of engineers come into picture. This is the technology part. How do you bring in different clouds, whether it is Microsoft, Google, AWS, whatever the case is? How do you build systems that allow you to enable privacy of the data? And then not only that, this is not going to be a one-time adoption. You are going to have a what is called as a lights-on adoption for a long period of time. So how do you bring best practices into the adoption field? Very importantly, how do you regulate this field? Because any mishap of doing AI-based predictions is going to be a detriment to the entire operations of clinical research. So a lot of thought processes goes into the adoption and implementation. And then finally, are we really ready to take on AI? For example, imagine this particular group. I understand there may be 400 people on the call. How many of you are really familiar with the nuances of AI? And obviously the answer is not. We are all students of the game right now. That means there is a need for doing continuous learning and innovation as part of this whole process, right? So this is how the field is looking at the interface of clinical pharmacology and AI right now. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories where we are seeing tremendous impact into the field. Since the designated topic is clinical research, let's quickly look at a typical life cycle of any clinical trial or clinical research as we call it, right? So there are typically 3 major phases. One is what we call as the startup phase, where a study is conceived according to the requirements, whether it is academic studies or whether it is commercial studies. Then is the ground level implementation, what we call as the nitty-gritty of the studies. And then it is study closeout and regulatory submissions, right? But if you really take a piecemeal approach to this entire workflow, you can break down all these processes into tiny steps. And for each of these tiny steps, there are current challenges. I've enlisted a few of these challenges earlier. But technology has also shown that you can overcome these challenges with the time and cost advantage, right? So this becomes like a landscape of what we typically do in the area of clinical research. Almost every box that you see is divided into white and orange. The white is the actual activity and the orange is where you can have AI interventions into this whole activity. And for this reason, AI adoption in clinical research is an extremely innovative field of work right now. It is also commercially rewarding. There are tremendous amount of churning going on. There are startups coming into picture. A lot of pharma companies are investing in this space. And I'm pretty sure the doctors are also constantly tracking this particular activity. You must have heard words like digital therapeutics, right? Few years ago, nobody knew what is digital therapeutics. But essentially, intervention of a technology that will have improved patient outcomes is now loosely called as digital therapeutics, right? And these are the new terms that are coming out by adoption of this kind of technology into clinical research. If you broadly divide clinical research into 4 major columns, one is the trial intelligence, that is study design, the intellectual part, the study implementation, then study management, that is a lot of best practices, and then finally regulatory submissions. What I'm going to do for today is, it is beyond the scope of current topics to talk about everything. given an opportunity, we can go deep dive into it. I'm going to take 3 use cases which are in this purple color. And I'm going to talk about how AI is impacting these 3 particular use cases, namely better study design. Secondly, how can we use synthetic data for improving the availability of good quality data sets? And finally, how do you use AI for what is called as regulatory submissions, regulatory writing, right? So that's going to be my flight plan for the next few minutes as we go into my presentation. So let's take the first use case, which we call as development of smart clinical trials. Now, anybody in this field who has been part of any clinical trial, and I'm sure many of the audience are part of one or the other clinical trial, they will know that the biggest bottleneck for any clinical trial is the appropriate choice of a patient. If you have a wrong patient for the wrong trial, your trial is almost doomed to fail, etc. But now in the field of modern biology, where you have a lot of biomarkers, you have a lot of imaging coming into picture, you have a lot of what is called as precision medicine coming into picture, there is an opportunity for doing appropriate selection of patients. So around this, there is a full concept called as smart clinical trials with AI interventions. And this is very important because this can actually have a tremendous impact on the top lines and the bottom lines of any operation coming together. So what has been done here, and again, my own group has been doing these kind of work. We have created a tool which is called as smart clinical trials. This is using a lot of AI tools. What we do in this case, imagine that you have a clinical trial protocol approved by the ethics committee. And in that ethics committee protocol, you have predefined eligibility criteria. Those eligibility criteria could be associated with your biomarkers, your patient characteristics and whatnot, right? It could be biology, it could be patient behavior, it could be prompts and so forth. So what it means is that there are certain keywords against which you can look for similar patients in a large pool of patients available to multicentric clinical trials, right? So with the help of AI, there is an ability to do something called as criteria extraction. That means you can first look at the telltale signs of what you're looking for. And then with the help of large database searching, you can do identification of certain patients who belong to only those particular key criteria. So this becomes almost like a filtering approach. Now, my second approach is, let's say I have started with 2000 patients, and with this filter, I have come to 200. And for those 200 patients, with the help of certain AI and medical algorithms, I can rank order them. So that means I can go from 200 to 20 people who are eligible for that particular trial. And this way you can start sharpening your cohort that will be enabled into this particular clinical trial. Automatically, because you are doing precision matching, these people are going to retain on the trial for a long period of time. And there is a good possibility that they may also give you primary and secondary objectives as part of your clinical trial outcome designs and etc. Right. So this is the approach which we call as patient cohort identification. If you see the current literature, almost every therapeutic area is using this kind of approach in order to determine better clinical trials, right? So this is all AI enabled. I will move on to the next use case. So this is called as synthetic data generation for clinical trials. And let me explain the context. There are now big trials coming up where the old model of doing a 2-arm double-blind randomized study model is becoming obsolete. And these are unique cases where you are working with rare diseases, you are working with small populations, or you are working with cross-geography trials, etc. Right? So you cannot exactly have equal status one-to-one randomization, but you still have to create a trial, right? So FD has taken it very kindly, of course, with a lot of science behind this, to generate what is called as a new age clinical trial design. I will not go into the details, but this is also called as an adaptive clinical trial design, right? So in this, what happens is you drop one arm. That means you still conduct a trial only with one experimental arm. But the arm that is used as the comparator, you use as an artificial control arm. As you can see in this diagram, there is a single arm, and then you have the real control arm, which is a placebo or standard of care. And then you have the AI generated synthetic arm, right? So this is quite revolutionary if you think of it, because suddenly the cost of the trial is reduced by 50%. The time for recruitment is reduced by 50%. The only thing that FDA would ask for you is this external control arm that you design has to be with certain standards. And those standards are called as fit for purpose standards, FFP standard. These are terms defined by the US. There is a guidance on FFP standards. And then if you are able to recreate this synthetic control arm with the help of FFP standards, you can still do the comparator studies between the experimental arm and control arm, right? As you can see, this is quite out of the box thinking, but this has really revolutionized the field of rare clinical research, so to say. And as you can see, the objectives are manifold here. You can achieve early regulatory compliance, you have enriched data sets, etc. But the real question is, how do you design this synthetic control arm? What is the way to create this kind of a data? So at my own group at Persistent, what we have done is we have created a AI-driven technology tool which uses a key principle of generative AI, which is called as generative adversarial networks, GANs. I'll not go into the engineering principles, but essentially what it does is it looks at the spread of the data, that is the mother data or the parent data, and it looks at the centrality of the data. Remember, every data is in the form of a bell curve, but that data which is central to the bell curve, you can replicate it with the help of AI. So that means from one image, in this case, I can create 100 images which belong to a similar cohort with almost similar characteristics. And remember, these are not identical images. These are similar images because they belong to the data centrality together. So now all of a sudden, when you have one good image, a parent image, you can suddenly create 100 images, and those images can be distributed as part of your cohort. And this is how you can achieve your statistical sample design or statistical analysis plan for synthetic data. The most complex synthetic data is the image data, but numerical data, textual data, which is typically with our biochemical parameters, I think that can also be replicated very well with the help of synthetic data. So you will see a lot of clinical trials now using synthetic data control arms with external control arms according to the FFP standards as very normal scenarios in the era of AI-driven clinical trials. Moving on, I'm conscious of the time. I want to spend a little bit of time on medical writing. Medical writing, as you know, is at the core of all clinical trials. In fact, no clinical trial is complete without regulatory dossier submissions. And if you see this CTD triangle is common technical document. If you look at module 5 here, this is clinical study reports. That means you have to close out a study and then you have to write a report according to the FDA templates in a certain standardized format, etc. And this by itself is a cottage industry, that is medical writing. You can see the numbers here. But at the same time, this is extremely human driven. It is subjective. It is very slow. And it is prone to a lot of human errors because sometimes you can have human fatigue and etc. So now the challenge is, can you automate this entire process with the help of AI or generative AI, as you call it, right? And the answer is yes. You can actually do what is called as first draft report generation with the help of AI, where you will still get a very good quality scientific document, which is still controlled by the humans, right? We are not saying that the humans are not required, but the generation of the first draft report, which otherwise would cost you 5 days, could potentially be done in 5 hours. So typically in such solutions, what happens is you have your raw data. That means your lot of experimental data coming from different sources. Not all that data is important. Only executive summary of that data is important. So you extract that data. Then you auto-populate that data into pre-standardized templates, which are defined by FDA and CTD. And then you allow this process to reiterate with the help of AI. That means there are versions 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, where the human gets to iterate and change the drafts according to the requirement. And finally, you have the draft report, which then you can submit as part of your FDA process, right? So this is again revolutionary. You will see a lot of impact of medical writing, not only in clinical trial documents, but even investigator brochures or clinical trial protocols, or even patient compliance documents, etc. So medical writing is a big impact area for AI interventions into clinical trial. I think I'll skip this document. This is exactly what you talk about. It is important to know that there is quality control also of the document. This is not just random, scattered or sporadic documentation. You can determine the quality. You can give the score, 90% score, 95% score to the draft so that everything becomes quality conscious. And this by itself is a very common process now in the CRO or the clinical trial industry. Having said that, I want to end this with this slide. I think the sky is completely open right now for AI interventions in clinical trial. Whether it is your clinical trial randomization, whether you want to do biomarker studies, etc. What I have done in this slide, I have just listed few of the applications where AI-driven interventions are becoming very strong. You can see few of them. You can do disease screening. You can do continuous glucose monitoring, medtech devices. You can do treatment planning with the help of AI. You can do prognostication of what may happen in future. All these are very good what we call as blue ocean projects. That means there is tremendous potential here. And at the same time, why this is attractive is because there is a new concept called as data as a product. That means if you collect your data very well, and in fact, this is a request to all the doctors here, please invest in creating good data systems, because you never know how you can be part of a data process together. So my take home for everybody here is the first line: fit for purpose data. That means good quality data coming together with very good smart and AI leverage. Not all, you don't need generative AI everywhere. You need to have a judicious choice between what type of AI. And very importantly, responsible and ethical practices of AI, keeping human always superseding the AI, is the pathway to unlocking a lot of data secrets. So this is something that will keep happening in future. And I think this is where companies like ourselves and individuals like me, we are building a completely new career into this kind of area. I'll take a pause here. Happy to take few questions and extremely grateful for the opportunity. Over to you, Dr. Purvi.
What a brilliant bird's eye view, Dr. Santosh, on leveraging AI for clinical research. Really enjoyed this and took me back to my days in drug development. Very quickly, before I introduce Dr. Manoj, I'd just like to say, so adaptive trials have been right there, right from, many years, and we have been manually designing them, etc. But tell me, and FDA also actively gets involved with, planning of the clinical trials, especially phase 3, because they don't want you to go wrong and you don't want to go wrong as a drug developer. Are they open to all of AI, including or, integrated into this process?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how?
Yeah, so now there are industry guidances by FDA, Office of Clinical Pharmacology, where AI is part of every step during the clinical research. The only requirement is that you need to submit to FDA in writing that what kind of AI are you going to use, what are you going to have as what is called as guardrails, and then how are you going to monitor the outcomes. These are the three primary requirements to call it a FDA regulated trial. In fact, FDA would also conduct workshops for you so that you avoid any mishaps and course correction during the course of regulatory submissions. So I think the big brother is very, very tuned into this whole activity because there is impact. Because ultimately what's going to happen is you will have better regulations and faster entry of drugs into the market. So I think it's an ecosystem play here. So FDA is giving support here.
Also, is there a code for federal regulations already out there, or it's in the making?
It is in the making. Just 3 months ago, FDA has published a guideline on complete guidances for adoption of responsible AI into clinical research, right? So I think the field is waking up to the whole concept of responsible AI. I think that is something we need to keep talking again and again. Responsible AI is going to be the differentiator.
Super. Dr. Manoj Chawla has joined in. He's co-founder of Dtech. A quick comment from him.
Thank you, Purvi and Santosh. Great conversation, interesting aspect for us clinicians, where you've taken us through the role of AI in clinical research, a bit overwhelming as well. My simple question to you is, does the sample size now reduce in the future phase 3s because FDA has allowed AI? So where a company or a sponsor required, let's say 800, statistically they required 800 patients in certain events, does that come down because the rest of it comes through the AI generated sample size?
No, so in any standardized clinical trial, let me classify it this way. There are your regular clinical trials, and then there are certain unique clinical trials where it is difficult to achieve the statistical sample size, right? So, for example, commonly occurring diseases, let's say NCDs, etc. If it is possible to recruit patients, FD would still want you to do the full scale recruitment to meet the statistical samples. But if we are doing unique populations, let's say a unique set of individuals where you have a genetic mutation, only in those situations you would want to reduce the sample size with the AI, right? So I think there is some kind of a filter on where AI can be used and where AI cannot be used.
Okay, fair. So those of us who are involved in clinical research at this stage need not be worried about shutting down the units, and you're still going to have sufficient patients and units.
I think the phase 3 trials will continue as it is. I think the post-trial processing, which is the medical documentation, the data analytics, all that will be simplified. So ultimately, if it takes, let's say, 1 year to get regulatory approval, you may actually try to shrink that by doing it in 7 months.
Which is applicable to the DCGI also in India, the
No, I
reduction
think
in
India is
period.
lacking, unfortunately. That's another topic.
True, true. Okay. And thank you, Santosh.
Okay.
I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Krishna Seshadri, our stalwart, our guru, and Pandit of tech, endocrine, and many other facets to him. Sir, did you have any question for Dr. Dixit before I go into a detailed introduction? So you're
No, this is fascinating. I think what we need is an hour of just this with a lot of discussion. And of course, there are tremendous amount of challenges because when we talk, what is the responsibility in responsible AI is the challenge, correct? And what we really need to see, and while I'm happy to see the FDA, and I have seen the document, so the FDA, this thing, there are still there is going to be a hand-holding period for the next few years, and I'll show you some tricks here that fall through the gaps. And for those of us who are doing clinical medicine, especially, some of this is really high science, but the next few years are probably going to be a time where we need to not take our eye off the ball.
Absolutely. Dr. Seshadri, this is a second career for people like us, right? So all this while we were doing clinical pharmacology, but now we are doing clinical pharmacology plus AI. So there is a lot of learning, unlearning cycle going on here.
brilliant. And yes, Rakesh, please.
Yes, Santosh, it was overwhelming, as Manoj said. I don't know whether it's possible to explain, but I am still not convinced how can AI do the job of having a sample. Like in biology, 2 plus 2 never becomes 4. There is so much of variation. So if we can have one arm, which is a synthetic arm created by AI, maybe in future we will not require any trials at all, because it will even create an arm for the intervention as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the aspirational view is virtual trials. So there will be digital twins and digital humans on which you can do primary trials and then take it to real life trials, right? So I think these are certain, as of today, they look like scientific fictions, but 3 years down the road, it may happen actually.
Can I explain this, Rakesh? Is it okay? You played video games, right, with avatars?
Right.
Now think of a simulation. I don't know if you played SimCity. Right, now think of an automated SimCity based on a large model, right? Just like how K-means clustering creates its own thing. You have a large model that can simulate itself and create the norm. That's really what it is.
But I'm not sure how close it would be to the reality. Like in the reality, there are so many variations in human beings. We all know about the.
So remember, LLMs actually are very good at identifying those variations, much better than human beings do. Is that correct, Santosh?
Santosh, I think he lost the connection somewhere. Yeah, he had to go somewhere. I think he had a meeting at 9 o'clock.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, he had actually a meeting with a US client.
But then Santosh has left, so probably we can move ahead with the second.
So just to place on record, we are extremely grateful to Dr. Santosh Dixit to have joined us last minute, and we're equally excited to welcome Dr. Krishna Seshadri, sir, an American board certified endocrinologist from Chennai and clinical research lead at Apollo Sugar and senior consultant at Apollo Hospitals in Chennai. He's the president of the Indian Thyroid Society, former honorary secretary of the Endocrine Society of India, founder, secretary, and past president Endocrine Society, Tamil Nadu, and has so many different facets to him. as a professional, as a person, that it's difficult to cover that in a couple of minutes. He's definitely well recognized in the field with awards like the PN Cha Oration of the Endocrine Society, Sam G.P. Moses Oration of the RSSDI, and so on and so forth. Without much ado, let's hear the traps in AI from Dr. Seshadri sir.
Just give me a minute. I have to. Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So this is part of a large workshop that I do. So, here are my conflicts of interest. So I'm just going to condense some of this into my talk today. But I have been a director in medical technology startup companies. I grew up in a generation where two things were happening. One was the growth of evidence-based medicine, and of course technology, right? I was an Apple fanboy for many years, and I start with this. Some people say give the customers what they want. But that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what they're going to want before they do. I think Henry Ford once said, if I'd asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. People don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's why I never rely on market research. Our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. So this is something interesting because this is where the world is going. Someone else has been deciding that this is what you want. And let me tell you that you won't find an older person than me who's very, very I'm a technology aficionado. I don't know if I'm tech savvy, but I've written code in my life. I created my own EHR. I can write some pretty passable code. But today, but let me talk to you as a clinician, because many of us get a little intimidated by AI, ML, and all these words, or we fall for it like a teenage crush. I think it's important to bring in our skepticism, our watchfulness, and our ability to sift through data as an important part of doing this. But are we going to stop the march of AI? The answer is no.
Sir?
Yeah?
Sir, may I request you to please turn on the video? The tech team also wants to see you.
I don't know if I can turn on the video on the Zoom because I'm in a tab and it has some issues. So I'll come back to the video. But can you see my slides?
Yes, sir. We
Slides are
can
not
see your
moving,
slide.
but they're not moving. Only the introduction is going on.
Well, I'm still on my first. Okay. So here's my first talk. So are we going to stop the march of technology? And the answer is no. This is a slide from 10 years ago, before AI even took over, right? This was a facial algorithm to diagnose Cushing's syndrome, right? One of the most difficult diagnoses to make, can be very subtle. But if you look at this particular slide, you realize that the overall specificity for a photograph to diagnose Cushing's disease accurately was about 95%, right? So so when you see all these things about diagnosing cardiovascular disease with an iris photograph, they're not exaggerated; they're true, right? And remember, this was before large spread utilization of AI or ML. Don't get worried about AI. We've been using AI for a long period of time. Logistic regression that we use in our clinical trials is actually the first AI that we've been using. But let me also talk to the other end of this. Many of us think that we will never be replaced. And I presented this at a group of endocrinologists some time ago in my own state. And you could see the kind of thing saying a doctor will never be replaced. Why? Because we are the most empathetic people. I have some bad news for you, right? This is an article that was published in the JAMA last year. That actually, it actually just took a chatbot and had patients respond to a doctor and a chatbot to figure out who is more empathetic. Guess what? Higher empathy gradings were given for the chatbot than the physician. So, as you would see, those who've seen Star Trek, there is an emotional chip, and they do better because, remember, the point about AI and ML is that while we don't learn as much as from our mistakes, this is designed to learn and improve. And I'll talk about it. This is the scope of AI and ML applications today. Choosing the right embryo, you can actually think about where things are going wrong, right? Genomic interpretations, of course. Alexa, you don't have to know whether somebody should have a ventilator turned on or off. And of course, radiology is the one thing where it's completely on. We talk about it, but also to monitor resources, right? And just to look at the number of AI approvals that have occurred in medicine in the last few years, you can see that it is climbing. And the FDA has gotten the act. We'll talk about it towards the end of my talk. But I want you to understand what is really happening. Before we think about AI as a bunch of algorithms and its next generation, which is machine learning and deep learning, as just improvements, I want you to think again. The very purpose of machine learning and AI, right from the beginning, from the late 40s, has been to recreate the human brain, but increase its power. Look at this particular slide, and it tells you what is computing power. This is the number of neurons that are present in the human brain. And today we don't have a biological system that's more attractive. This is the exponential growth in computing. And just to let you know that computing has reached the order of a single human's possible intelligence this year. And it's growing, right? While we are limited by the computing power of our brain, now this is going to be exponential. And just those of you who remember the new quantum chip that was released, the other changes that are occurring, the growth of computing has exceeded human intelligence this year. What are we really talking about? So this is artificial intelligence where there is an algorithm. This is machine learning where there is an improvement in the algorithm and there are changes. Deep learning is taking it to the order of n. I'll give you an example, a very old example. If you look at neurons, remember, as we learn, synapses increase, right? This is Kashan, very old pictures. I really love these last century pictures. And you will see how the synapses grow. And if you realize modern computing, the neural learning networks are based on how the synapse responses are occurring. So let us say there are two particular answers. If a synapse triggers and it repeatedly triggers one side, the brain takes a leap and starts recognizing that as the most likely answer. And it starts reinforcing and starts learning patterns, right? And that's really what's happening, and that's what machine learning is trying to do. It. What does it do? It takes a raw data. It can be structured and unstructured. Structured data is what we tell it. Unstructured data is where it tries to find the structure on its own, right? Then there's a feature extraction. It finds the commonalities. It takes it out. It cleans up the data. It reduces the dimension. And then it tunes a parameter. Then it gives you a prediction, right? For example, this is a very simple way of doing this. This is a cat, what the computer sees, and using multiple layers of this thing, it tells you, it classifies it. But each time there's a feedback, either by human or by itself, learning what works. So this is the old machine learning. There's an input, a human is feature extracting, then there is a classification and there's an output. But in deep learning, there is no focus of learning. Like K means clustering, it actually takes up its own feature extraction. And I'll tell you the good things about it, but also the bad things about it. It extracts it, it classifies it, and gives you an output. So just for those of you who are not into this field, these are the types of MR. For example, there's input. There's supervised learning where one of us tells you this is right or wrong. Then there's unsupervised learning, but here is the new one, which is the reinforcement learning, where it feeds back and it learns. So what is really happening is, we know that there's an input layer and there's an output layer, but over a period of time, there are hidden layers that we don't know what is happening. We know what we fed in, we know what's coming out, but we really can't explain why it is coming out that way. And that is the hidden danger of ML we'll talk about. So as we move towards ML, there are three parts. One is a low automation. We are right, most of us are here, we're using simple risk calculators. We are using CGM. But look at but how many of us know exactly how our AI pump works? We know it works. We know our patients don't turn back to us. Their A1Cs are fine. But there's a black box that we're not able to explain. And that's where the problem comes. I'm going to give you some examples. Again, not to discourage you from AI, not to discourage you from ML, but to adopt it, understanding the technology and understanding the traps. A slightly older article, but I find this fascinating because it helps me understand, and it helps many people understand when I talk about this. Now, what do you use to predict hypoglycemia? Glucose, right? So you measure CGM, you measure the glucose, and it can actually predict and say the glucose is going to go up, you can go down based on patterns and algorithms. Now, here is an example of someone doing a trial, put up an ECG, a 5-minute ECG of 200 heartbeats, along with a CGM, and allowed the computer to look at the ECG and the CGM and come up with a predictor that no longer leads to glucose. And without a glucose measurement, the ECG was able to, and the first pass was not the second pass, the first pass, it predicted hypoglycemia by 84%. Now, if this were in your Apple Watch or anywhere else, this would do as well as a CGM or a glucose monitor. But the point is, we did not know how it did this. We know it was able to do this, but there's a black box on what it used to get there. Was it an upstroke? Was it a segment? We were able to theorize, but not exactly. Let me give you an example of something that's fascinating for me. Many of us now rely on, and you see this, and you see even Elon Musk talking about using a large learning model or putting images on Grok to check. In fact, the last 2 days, I don't know how many of you saw that there was a person who presented X-rays of a wrist of a child. The child had gone to the emergency room. The X-rays were reviewed by the ER tech, by the ER physician, by the trainee radiologist, right? And then told that there is nothing, you can go home. And this person actually put this through Grok, and Grok said there is a Colles fracture. Then they went back the next day to an orthopedician who reviewed it, who looked at it and said, yeah, there's a Colles fracture, and said it right. And then people started saying, I'm no longer going to do any medical consult without first putting it through this thing. What nobody talked about was that the X-rays were actually badly positioned. And no one knew how Grok identified it. It gave some explanations, but not necessarily what an expert would agree. Let me give you something very interesting. This is a fascinating story. Dr. Madry, who's one of the greatest experts on AI today, talked about an example where this is a machine learning algorithm that examined X-rays that outperformed physicians. It turned out, so it was looking at outperforming X-rays, physicians in tuberculosis, right? So it was trained with a lot of samples of tuberculosis. And remember, a lot of TB X-rays were from many years ago. And the things that were inputted were, among other things, were the machine in which the X-ray was taken. The AI relied, when they actually did the comparison, they found out that the TB was being more diagnosed when it saw that the X-ray was being taken in an older machine. The machine learning program learned that if the X-ray was taken in an older machine, the patient was more likely to have tuberculosis. It completed the task, but not in the way the programmers intended or would find. Can you see the fallacy here? It is getting the right answer for the wrong reason. That's fine. Okay, I can live with that. Many of us will say, no, it doesn't matter. I've gotten my answer, fine. But let's see where it gets a little murky. Depending on what the data, so when Santosh talked about data, I'll give you an example, my personal example. I've been working with, by the way, don't look at the color of my hair. I've been working with machine learning for some years now. I was helping a bunch of young people in the US try to develop a ML algorithm for deciding whether diabetes drugs would work. And when I looked at their data, this thing, I found that it was doing some crazy predictions. Then we looked at the initial data set it was trained on. It was trained on county hospitals inpatients from people who were admitted to a hospital, right? And these were all people who were getting a certain degree of care, a lower standard of care, not access to all the medications. But more importantly, these are ER visits because they could not find data of outpatients. Most people don't maintain good outpatient records, and I see this here because I work with EHRs. I can tell you that people don't do good outpatient records. So it depends on the data set it was trained. Let me show you something that people are now are increasingly recognizing. That is that this is called hallucinations. A lot of computers now reconstruct images, right? Now, these are MRIs of children where the computer reconstructed the image, and actually the image was false. Why? It was trained on an adult data set and was using it on a pediatric MRI. But what we are learning is, remember, these were learned to be not perfect machines, but be like humans. Like humans who fill in gaps with garbage sometimes when they don't know. These machines have started doing it. These are called hallucinations in AI. Please look it up. I'm not cooking up any of these. I have taken oaths for truths many years ago. Now, I go to every meeting and there is an AI workshop where everyone talks to people about how to use ChatGPT to do research, to do calculations, to write articles. And God forbid, in the Endocrine Society meeting, I heard somebody telling them, use it to write your thesis. But nobody realizes this is what's happening. The ChatGPT actually cooks evidence. And this is a published article, by the way. And you'll see that this is the problem with generative AI, right? Look at this carefully. It says another theory is that homocysteine impairs vitamin K dependent carboxylation of osteocalcin, leading to decreases in activity, which is important for bone mineralization. There's actually no such thing. Now, when somebody queried this, suddenly realized that it had actually cooked up the reference. When somebody actually went and did a PMID search of these, such a reference did not even exist. Now, people can say, oh, you can program it to say, give me only true evidences. But the truth is, many of us doctors, we look at technology, we are so intimidated by it, we believe what it says. To take this further, somebody did actually look at several studies and saw what was this thing. Overall, ChatGPT was fabricating 47% of its references. And of the authentic references, only 7% were accurate. Now, I'll tell you, it reminds me of my days as a PG teacher. And I'll tell you the greatest disservice that the Medical Council of India, and I was part of it, did to science was to allow PGs, require PGs to publish. Because if you know, every 15th patient is a random repetition of the former or a cooker. And our technology somehow recreates us. Let's take this further. So what is happening here? There is bias in AI. How can it occur? Mostly because of the data. Garbage in, garbage out. The data is not clear. It's not good. The right data has not been given. The biased cleaning process occurs. Many of you would have seen that when someone asked, show me the pictures of the kings of England, and it showed African-American faces, right? I've tried using Grok and others to draw Ramayana characters. And the prompts have been so precise to do it that it's not possible. Of course, biased data labeling, what we have, models being used. And I'm sorry, you know, I love technologies, but I think just many of them don't have they look at medicine too simplistically. They don't understand the complexities required. And therefore, many of the technologists devised medical algorithms are very simplistic and make intuitive leaps of faith. Then the training models are also important, right? And the models on which they are trained, if they are biased, if the sample size, if they're just from a Ivy League school or a suburb of Harvard, they can have issues. And then you can have biased AI outcomes. So let's look at what's happening. The first thing is, what is the soil? I talked about it. The soil is bad, your output is bad. The second thing is, what is going on inside? The attributability. If you can't explain it, then there's a problem. I give you examples of what can be explained, right? So, and the third is, if you can't explain why it has given you the output, then you should your antenna needs to go up. The best way I can explain this is by going back to my favorite author, J.K. Rowling. Ginny said, Mr. Weasley, flabbergasted, haven't I not taught you anything? What have I always told you? Never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain. So when you have a black box, then there's a problem, right? The deeper the layers of this thing, the more complex it is, but it can't explain it. So there is this interpretability trade-off. They will tell you, look, accuracy is important, but what is the accuracy? Take your time, give me your best ML 10 years down the line, but I want to know how it is developed. The number of iterations, the number of changes, the number of things need to be very precise. We need to approach machine learning in medicine with the same rigor we look at a randomized controlled trial. What is the odds ratio? Was there a loading? Was this bias? Was it somebody's? Can every step be interpreted? The next thing is, we don't understand who owns the data, right? Many of these are public domain data from various places that have probably breached a lot of privacy. I won't get into this today, That's a big question, all the others. But importantly, who owns the accountability? At this point of time, if you have used any tech software, you've basically written off that person's accountability. If you're using it in your clinical practice, and especially the greater the autonomy, how many of you remember Odyssey, Space Odyssey 2001? I've been in love with sci-fi since my first Isaac Asimov novel. I think a lot of our own Puranas have so much sci-fi in it. They've identified multi-dimensions far before these guys even thought about it. But look at the singularity. I know I made some poor decisions recently, but I can give you my complete assurance that my work will be back to normal. I still got the greatest enthusiasm and confidence in the mission, and I want to help you. And at some point of time, it actually kills me. And if it is programmed the wrong way, it can decide that the termination of a life support is probably the right thing, just because that's what it believes in. Very interesting. I don't know. One of the biggest scientists in Google running AI just quit. You know why he quit? Very interesting. That he realized that ML is far more advanced than it gives away. If you don't give it the prompt, it actually withholds information. That it has reached a capability beyond human intelligence that we can no longer control. So while we should retain our enthusiasm for it, we should also keep our vigilance, and we should make sure that the wrong people, just like, and now we can talk about it, that the Fossey lab and what happened in China and COVID-19 are great examples of what big technology in the wrong hands can do. Comes to this particular thing that the more autonomy machines achieve, the more tenuous the strategy of attributing and distributing legal responsibility for their behavior to human beings. And who can you trust? I forgot to put this particular cartoon, but it says that, what is the point? What is the greatest point of having? What is the greatest thing about Tesla? That if you don't pay your monthly installments, the car will drive itself back to Elon Musk. But that's true. Like it can prevent an accident, it can also do what its programmer wants it to do. That's autonomy. But let's take this into the clinical area. I won't get into my experiments with the Grok, showing exactly what it is, that it thinks it reads it correctly, but there are mistakes, especially with pathology. I won't go into this, but let me come to this. Are you going to have regulators who come to support? While the FDA is going to do this, it will not interfere unless it thinks it's a device. A software, according to the FDA, is not a device, right? And these are the FDA guidelines right now, so we can discuss it afterwards. But don't expect government to come to your support because they're nowhere near. But what is going to happen is this. Right now, AI is helping you make a recommendation and you are the decision maker. But at some point of time, there's going to be a greedy insurance company, or you're working in a private hospital and your boss thinks that you're not making sufficient money. This is going to be reversed. You are only going to be part of the process and part of the accountability, but the decision is going to be made, just like how NICE makes a decision, right? Not all its decisions are the best of clinical evidence, but they could also be partially on what are the resources it takes from the system. But imagine these being programmed into an AI or an ML, and that happening to your mother or your mother-in-law. That is the issue. And being aware of it is very important. We can't go away from it, we can't stop it, but we should be part of it. And the more and more doctors learn about it and be voices of independence, and be voices of reason, be voices that encourage growth but not be enamored by it, we will do better. I'll close with my other favorite author, Dan Brown. May our philosophies keep pace with our technologies. May our compassion keep pace with our powers, and may love, not fear, be the engineer of change. But as Mikhail Gorbachev once said, trust but verify. Thank you. I hope I did not scare you, but I really wanted to we get so carried away by this, but we should be aware of this. And I can tell you that you won't find a greater technophile than me, but I think we need to be realistic in our expectations and vigilant in our outcomes. Thank you so much. I will stop here and allow questions, discussions, comments, and of course, brickbats.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Seshadri sir, for this wonderful, very, very incisive discussion or talk on traps in AI. I think we have to spend a lot of time with you to actually understand this even more, because we are just grasping onto the basics of AI. And clearly, pundits like you have, gone far ahead, but we will look at more and more guidance from you, sir. I have the pleasure of having Dr. Mithun Bhartiya with us, who is the co-founder of Dtech, and a quick comment from him before we move on to our riveting panel discussion.
I think, thank you, Purvi. I think before I make any comment, I really thank Purvi from the bottom of our heart, from the Dtech team, for looking after this aspect of Dtech Dialogues. And I think Krishna sir has rightly put the cat or the bell among the cats. With all the noise around AI, we need to be aware what we are trying to marry into. I think excellent presentation as always, sir. And I pass the buck back to Purvi for continue.
Thank you so much. And we will take Dr. Seshadri sir's. Yes, Rakesh, please go on.
Before we move ahead with the panel discussion,
Rakesh, you'll have to speak up. I'm having that technical issue where I'm not able to hear too well.
Okay, so before we move to Amit and Alok will of course defend AI, I just had one question comment for Dr. Krishna. When you started your initial slides, it appeared that you are saying or trying to say that the AI is more empathetic than even the humans. There was a study showing that. And at that time, I recollected one article by, I guess, Kevin Roos. I don't know whether you read that article or not. He wrote in New York Times, I guess. So the first time he tested Microsoft's AI, that AI interacted with him and even suggested him to divorce his wife because the AI was in love with that journalist. So that much of empathy is there with AI, which is probably too much. And there it appeared scary.
Rakesh, is your wife hearing this?
No, she's not around.
Because divorcing your wife is very empathetic.
So reading that blog really, I felt scary. I don't know how they handle it and control it now, but we don't know. As you said, the potential probably is not yet realized. We don't know how much the potential AI has, and it really looks quite scary how it would be in the future. Do you feel scared about the AI overtaking all of us?
No, I don't. No, I'm not scared of it, because I think there are parts to it that are scary, right? In the wrong hands, it is going to be scary. But there are certain things that we don't do well. And in fact, we don't do compassion well, right? For example, a very, very well-trained AI taking care of people at the end of their life, that's compassionate, is very interesting. I would love to have a compassion bot, a compassion robot working with this thing, right? There are some of these that do exceptionally well. But unfortunately, I happen to be the sibling of someone who's right in the front of AI, and she tells me that 96% of what people call AI is not AI. It's just fancy algorithms written and passed off on AI. The next generation of AI and ML is going to be very, very interesting. And unfortunately, physicians somehow seem to be reluctant to, they are happy to, use it to ask a question. They believe it, but they are not willing to take the thing to say, okay, when it comes to my field, I want it to show me these. They're not willing to put it through the rigor that they put a clinic, that they put a drug through or a test through. And that's and in fact, that is why one of the things that I've been suggesting is let's write down the expected standards for AI in at least diabetes care from an Indian standpoint of view. I think it's unless we draw the guardrails, this is going to be an issue.
You said that you also are, you do watch a lot of science fictions. I don't know, did you watch the web series The 100? The 100 is a web series. If you have watched that web series, there is a character called Prime Fire. That web series was I think, released 10 years back. But at that time, it was AI. And the whole story is in 10 seasons. But then I would suggest that you watch it. So it was responsible for the apocalypse that time, in that web series. And it really scares.
I don't want to be in the same.
I think I'll stop here. We can go ahead with the panel discussion. We are getting late now.
So sorry about that. Had a technical glitch. I just missed that discussion, but I will catch up on it very soon. Without much ado, let me invite Dr. Amit Dey and Dr. Alok Modi for our panel discussion to join Dr. Seshadri sir and Rakesh, and hopefully Dr. Banshi sir is also around. Let me quickly introduce Dr. Amit Dey, a very dynamic physician, diabetologist from Kolkata. And he's been very well recognized for his contributions to diabetes care and technology innovation, receiving multiple awards, including the Awareness Initiative Award at Diabetes India 2020, and many such. Importantly, he's been the founder, chair of Doctors AI, a medical community connecting over 2,000 healthcare professionals on AI related topics, and has many other facets to his career. So, without much ado, let me move on to Dr. Alok Modi, who is our next panelist, who is from my city of Mumbai, or rather Thane, and he is a consultant physician, diabetologist, and has several fellowships also and awards. He is an avid writer, and he is board certified by the American Board of Artificial Intelligence and Massachusetts University in Artificial Intelligence. He's also undergoing training by IIT Kanpur on AI in medicine and is also well recognized in this field. So, very warm welcome to both of you to join this panel discussion. And I think let me move on. So, welcome, and let me move on to the first question. And I'll start with you, Amit. So, many of us, we are still warming up to AI and its applications, the basics of it, the application. And, I think with every expert speaker, like Dr. Dikshit and Dr. Seshadri sir, we are learning how it is so much beyond chat GPT, and which is very commonly known. So, in your opinion, is AI going to really percolate? Has it percolated only the private healthcare sector, or is being avidly adopted by government institutes within India? And if you can share some examples on both ends, that would be important, because we are aware that we do not want to increase health uh, inequities, and is this really going to impact that? So your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much, Dr. Purvi, for the kind invitation, and a big congratulations to you and Dr. Rakesh, and of course, Bansi sir, Dr. Manoj, Mithun, for taking this initiative of AI literacy from the Dtech platform. From Doctors AI, we congratulate you for this effort. At the outset, fantastic presentation by Dr. Shashadri sir and Dr. Dikshit. And I'll just start with one very, very simple statement, is that the smartness of an AI algorithm is as good as the data on which it is trained. And I think Dr. Seshadri has clearly pointed that out. And also, the output that an AI model will be able to give me, uh, it will totally depend upon how smart I am prompting it. So I think as the human in the loop connect, there is always going to be the gaps and the traps that Dr. Shashadri sir spoke about. But I look at it from the point of view that we have been living in the era of human traps. Possibly we are going into the era of AI traps. We have lived through it and we will continue to live through it and evolve through it with the right literacy and the right training and the right frame of mind. Coming to your question of the percolation of AI into the healthcare system, I think at the moment, unless you're living under a rock, you would know that AI has already percolated the healthcare system. That's there. Now, whether it's more in the private healthcare system or in the public healthcare system depends upon which context of AI that you're wanting to look at. Now, from the overall viewpoint of the usage of AI as we have today, we are definitely looking at AI definitely revolutionizing research, something which Dr. Dikshit spoke about, whether it's clinical trials, whether it's the way in which we're conducting our real world research, the way we are scripting our research articles, it's going to have an impact into research. And in a very nutshell manner, it's going to augment our productivity and creativity in certain areas of our daily life as doctors and partly at the moment in our clinical life. The aspect of AI which we strongly feel is now getting developed is the application of the clinical decision support system. And once that comes in foolproof with more data and more algorithms going into the flow of this clinical decision support system, then we really feel that it's going to percolate in practice healthcare. And that in practice healthcare percolation would largely be in the context of population health, controlling the non communicable diseases, looking at the rare disease conditions, especially a lot of work has happened in the field of cancer research. Image classification, that is pathology, dermatology, radiology, I think a lot of development has already happened in that, and that's more going to evolve with the development of deep learning and the augmentation of generative adversarial networks, bringing a layer of generative AI on it. So I think that is going to continuously develop. But from our perspective, we are going to find a change with the application of AI coming in the clinical decision support system that will get incorporated into your EMR, electronic health records, into a chatbot that will get integrated with you at every point, augmenting the decision made by the clinician. I think that's where it's going to percolate and come down. So yes, having an impact on the way you take a clinical decision and also having a larger impact the way you on your cognition, the way you look at the disease and the way you interpret the disease, with all the gaps and the traps that Shadri sir spoke about. Public health is one segment. If we can rightly incorporate artificial intelligence, then I really feel that down the line, and as I say, this is very utopian way of thought, that somewhere down the line we can minimize the inequalities in healthcare, because
Absolutely.
somewhere with the right application of the right tool for the right patient at the right point of time, we will be able to minimize that need gap in delivering the care. And if we can do it with the right guardrails, with the right people, with the human in the loop, with the right intent, then we are possibly be able to bring down the inequalities. And the other point I want to make here before I let you take over the next question is, and I've always been faced this question with our counterparts from the Western countries, is that the healthcare system in India is very diverse and really think AI systems can fit in. I personally feel that our diversity in the healthcare system, ecosystem, the private, the public healthcare, the rural healthcare, the urban healthcare setting is actually going to be a strength in implementing AI rather than a disadvantage. Compared to the NHS, compared to the United States, where they have a comparatively more uniform format of healthcare delivery, I think our diversity is going to actually help us use AI more towards population health. Time will tell us.
I think that is exactly what I keep saying, that it's the West that is talking about individualization, but it's India that's actually implementing it. because of our diversity, I think we really need to individualize solutions so much more than any other place.
Can I
Very well described and explained, Dr. Amit. With
can I
that,
can I comment? Can I make a small comment?
absolutely, sir. Please.
Okay. So I think there are going to be two game changers in this. One is the announcement of the AI engine into laptops that NVIDIA has just made right now this year. I think that is going to be. And something that most people have not looked at is the new development of SLMs, which is, we know about large language models, which people talk about, that have been driving healthcare and everything else for now, and makes us completely dependent on the West. But I think the India story is going to be SLM. The more SLMs may have the great power of LLMs, but they are more flexible, they are more efficient, and they will bring AI to a clinic much faster than anything else. I am particularly looking forward to these being the game changers for India in the next 10 years. And I think we can create our own ecosystem that is not necessarily, cut and paste from the West. Thanks. Sorry, I thought that's my limited technology knowledge, but I think this is great.
That's great, sir. It's really very interesting to know all the takes on AI, tech, and healthcare because I think we are headed very much faster than we had anticipated. So I think this is very good discussion. Let's keep it going. So with that, Alok, if you can share some examples on AI for physicians as well as patients in the field of diabetes. I'm just reminding everyone this is a DTech platform, and please register soon for Dtechcon 2025 for the May conference. So with that, quick examples for on AI for physicians as well as patients in the field of diabetes, with a comment on common mistakes and traps as well. Alok?
Yeah.
You have to
Am I audible?
yes.
Am I audible now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, now you are.
So
Thank you.
before I come to that, I would like to thank Vanshi sir, you, Purvi, Dr. Rakesh Parikh, and everybody for this wonderful opportunity. And today was a fantastic program. I was thoroughly mesmerized. And Shishadri sir, you were phenomenal. I have not heard a lecture better than this in the last 3 years, even in the Global Summit. You really covered it so beautifully. I don't think even an AI can do a better job. It was fantastic. I'm really a fan of yours. It was too good. It was fantastic.
It's really
Coming to
pleasing
your
to hear,
point
guys.
regarding, but you really covered the nuances. You actually brought out the real small pitfalls, which give your car a juggle when you drive a car. You actually brought up the real fine nuances. I'll chat with you later. I was really touched by that. So coming to this, see AI. Before I answer that question, I just like to say something. Suppose we go to a physician whom we don't know, and he gives a different diagnosis and a different therapy. We're not so scared because he's a human being. Just because AI is in its infancy and it is doing something different that we think is not right, we're sort of writing it off and we're to the sky, it's not right. And I am reminded of a wonderful slide which I read long back. When the television came, people wrote it off. When the telephone came, people wrote it off. When the mobile phone came, people wrote it off. And today we cannot live without that. So trust me, after 7 years or 8 years, there will be AI. And we need to be in an empathic, symbiotic relationship where we won't be able to live without AI. And after 3 years, DTech would be run by AI and humans simultaneously. Mark my words, I think they will come true. It will be a very healthy symbiotic relationship. But the role of AI is so phenomenal. I've gone through a couple of data. For physicians, for clinicians, I use ChatGPT quite nicely. Before you can sit and calculate the BMI, the EGF, or the whole gamut of profiling of your patient, it can do the entire thing within less than 30 seconds, saves a lot of your time. The question you ask is how much of it is reliable. So I'm not using ChatGPT to give me my therapeutic options and my diagnostic modalities. It is helping me summarize
a lot of articles that I'm not able to cope up to with the diabetic arena. It is giving me I imagine a patient coming from a Fortis hospital and then moving to an Ambani hospital and then moving to a third corporate hospital with 40 files and coming to you. And you can just feed that in AI and you get such wonderful synopsis. You have everything ready for you to make right decisions. You look at a CGM that Dr. Manshi sir had published a very beautiful paper. We would like to do CGMs 4 times to 6 times in a year. Patients are not going to afford it because of cost reasons and insurance reasons. And there is a
So you
wonderful
are
AI to
suggesting CGM and AI for patients, or you're suggesting that for
no, I'm talking for
physicians?
doctors first. I'm first talking
Doctors.
about the doctors part. So there is a wonderful AI tool called Jupyter. So one CGM, it gives you a prediction for the entire year. One of the strengths of AI is prediction. The difference between statistics and even when I was going to talk about when you're discussing trials, you talk of silico analysis, whatever synthetic arms and we have discussed, you do a trial, you cannot run a trial for 15 years. AI can run the trial for 20 years and give you real accurate outputs. So this Jupyter is such a wonderful thing. Eversense has now come for 12 years, 12 months CGM, but you do one normal CGM for 15 days, it can give you the output for the entire year, prediction models, which are so phenomenally good. The role of AI in machine learning in insulin pumps. It was such a wonderful paper where they showed that a lot of hypoglycemics in type 1 diabetes can be prevented by actually monitoring and managing the dosages through AI algorithms. There are so many examples. There was such a wonderful paper where an AI went through probably more than 500 and 1,000 prescriptions and told the clinicians that some drugs which should have been written were not written, and some drugs which were written need not have been written. So a live example of how precision medicine can work because of AI. I use a lot of AI to supplement my dietitian's advice and tell the dietitian it gives you 4 or 5 options for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I combine the CGM report, I combine the dietic report, I combine the exercise pattern, and I don't think there is a system which can combine 3 of them and give you very legitimate and logical answers. Of course, that's not meant as a replacement for clinical acumen. That's meant as an addition or as an augmentation for your clinical acumen to guide you and to play such a wonderful role, helps you make very fine-tuned decisions for the future. But then you have to take the responsibility for the decisions and not let AI talk over. Some few examples that I give you about the medical professional. Coming to the patients, Amit is here. We did a lot of validation of Madhu. I think no better example, our own home product. It's such a wonderful thing. I was one of the validators. It gives us just fantastic answers and guidances and nuances to help a patient 24 by 7, a doctor and a nurse in your pocket, answering every query of yours, handling every problems that you're facing in diabetes. A wonderful chatbot. And I did something when I was validating it, I ran it through some very complicated scenarios where a patient would probably change the doctor and go for a medical legal opinion, and how this tool actually guided the patient to come back to the primary physician and tell the patient that the physician was guiding him on the right path by giving SGLT2 in spite of having a urinary infection. So patients have a lot of Dr. Bharat Saab, who has made Mitra, which works in a very pragmatic fashion, taking into account multiple scenarios and giving you a very good chatbot outputs. So that's My Sugar is another tool. There are My Sugar is a tool which can actually filter out your CGM report and give you analysis, correlating it with the social, the drug history, and the other things. When you combine it with an AI tool and gives you an answer as to this hypoglycemia, would it be relevant, why it has been caused, and how it can be avoided, rather than just feed sugar to the patient. So there are so many AI tools which are in development and going on, which are pro for the clinician and pro for the patient. But the only thing that we need to know, the drawbacks are, you should not pass off your responsibility to the AI. Just as when you're admitting, I give a very common example. When you're admitting your child in a very prime school paying heavy money, you cannot say that giving sanskar to the child or growing up the child and giving character to the child is a responsibility of the school and the teacher. That is your responsibility. So, like Shishadri sir said, when you're working with an AI tool, you're getting a lot of advantages which you were not getting otherwise. But then the responsible behavior has to come from your side. You have to take the final call. How much of this data output should I accept and should I not accept? And how much of it should I implement on my patient? Because ultimately, you have to take the responsibility for the benefit of the patient. And here I'm reminded of a wonderful thing. I'm a fan of Star Trek. I used to watch a lot of Star Trek. If you remember, there was a species called uh, Borg in Star Trek, which was a collective intelligence species. all the different planetary systems and ecosystems, combined intelligence was put into action. And they were rogue people, they were trouble people, but they were far ahead with their science and knowledge. The reason why AI does well is because it combines the inputs from so many brains, so many cultures, so many scenarios, and so many patients across the planet, which a human brain can't do. So it is like 100 or 1000 times a normal human brain, but the output it gives is so fine tuned and beautiful. I've got such wonderful experiences, but also depends on how you handle it. So once I got an EGFR of 1500 in a patient, which is impossible naturally. So it's up to you how you handle the AI tool, how you handle your prompt, and how do you generate your output from a generative AI. So it can be a fantastic tool in the hand of a clinician and a patient. It can also be a detrimental tool. There has been an episode of a chatbot telling a diabetic patient to commit suicide who actually committed suicide because the chatbot told the patient that you cannot improve in your life. And this is a black mark and this is a real life. So that is the truth. The whole thing depends on how you behave responsibly and how you take your tools forward, which could make a big difference. And I think we should support AI in a responsible manner so that we remain ethical, AI remains ethical.
Great. I think I'm not going to dispute that, but it's not like I accept it all. It's just that, I maybe I should ask Amit to give a quick comment on that, because I'm really very, very curious as to how have you validated Madhu AI? How many patients? It needs a thorough before we, just make wild claims. I think
Before
we
that,
do
we are
need
not
to be
using
a
it in
bit.
clinical practice. We are not using it in clinic. I just give that as an example how
Yeah.
we could fine tune an AI to
I
get
just
answers
want
and
the
help
right
people.
I think
message to
I
go
think
across through
the
this
term that
webinar.
yeah, so that I think we're going in a different direction of discussion. I think the
Hmm.
term here is rather fine tuning of an existing language model. That's what underwent behind the training of Madhu AI. The layer that we added was the fine tuning happened all right that we keep doing. Anybody who's building an AI agent can fine tune it and add a layer of RAG over it, which I just wrote what RAGs are. So it basically you create a layer and from there you draw the inference. The thing what we did in Madhu was we had a loop of clinicians looking at the response and we found fine-tuned it further based on the approval given by the clinicians on whether the accuracy, whether the coherence, whether the relevance of the output was in sync in clinical standards. So maybe we should not terminate it as validation, but we can definitely call it evaluation. Now, why there's a confusion is because we still do not have this clear-cut definitions of validation and evaluation of a AI agent or a clinical in the context of clinical medicine. So I think once we have those definitions and terminologies well defined and the guardrails placed by the rule makers, I think these things are going to get much more clearer. But till then, as entrepreneurs, we should actually make this effort of voicing that not just any AI agent can be a medical agent, but it has to be looked with an overlay of medical experts, and then the responses needs to be judged, looked into uh, 5, 6 aspects, which we took from the human leap model, that is the coherence, the relevance, whether it's doing any harm. That is very important. That's one particular question we asked, whether it's doing any harm. And then certain grades of evaluation can be created based on a Likert scoring. So that's what we did with model.
I think
Can I?
that's a great qualification to that answer and claim. Also, I have a very simplistic question. So, if you have developed and group of clinicians have looked at Madhu AI as a solution for many things, and so is it like a ready product that I can just adapt in my clinical practice? Because I am a physician with my own thought process, and my way of treating things, treating people, and talking uh, about different drugs and about different conditions with patients. So wouldn't it require me to train my AI tool and then use that, rather than taking it from what a group of experts have done, even though they might be maybe 10 times superior? That's not the point of contention here. It's just that whether can I use it directly into my practice, or do I need to, or I mean, definitely I would need something that I want to train and personalize.
So the first thing is, for using any particular tool, as per the Indian laws and the law of the land, it needs a CDSCO approval. And at the moment, the CDSCO doesn't have an approval separated for AI tools and as devices. It categorizes any AI tool as devices. And I think FDA has just started separating it out. They have still not done it completely. So at the moment, any doctor who is using any particular AI agent or an AI tool for impacting their clinical decision or their intent of treatment is solely responsible for the way that person is using it. So it cannot be officially demarcated as something that I can ask you to use it or somebody to use it, because we do not have that legality set, those legality boundaries set yet. The second point is, I completely agree with you when you say that as a doctor who is practicing in Karnataka and a doctor who is practicing in Kolkata, or a doctor practicing in Jammu and Kashmir, will have a different subset of patient data on which the AI agents need to be trained. And this is where the layers of RAG and fine tuning come in. This is where we say that an AI agent can be built on any small, medium, and large language model. But when you start using it, you can add multiple layers of fine tuning to it, where the black boxes and the hallucinations can be taken away by a great extent. And the biggest thing that we now have in hand is retrieval augmented generation, where you don't need to really retrieve the inference or the information all the time from the base model or the transformer model, but you can have a layer of data set from where, or a layer of information from where you can drive it, which is looked at, which is evaluated, and which is secured, and which has been told it's not going to do any harm. Now that can be built individually for individual ecosystem or an individual practicing ecosystem, and that takes you maybe a little bit one step closer towards what we think and emulate to be precision care in our practice.
Can I come in?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, there are 2 points I want to make. One is, I think the ultimate solution for this is the integration of a machine learning system into the EHR. Right,
Yes, absolutely.
right, and that will and with the 3 things that I talked about, a localized AI engine and an SLM. At this point of time, I'm going to be very skeptical about this, because Chat GPT based enhancements are based on OpenAI, right? And OpenAI is under a lot of attack at this point of time. This is something that we have to think about. But let me take this back to a little further, and I don't want to get into this further. But I want to also warn you of something that I wanted to mention in my talk, but I didn't. And that is deterioration of clinical skills, right? This is something very, very important that we need to think about. For example, I have pretty much lost the ability to read bone ages, because I now just show the image to a AI generated tool to fasten my thing. I stopped doing regular computations. Over a period of time, some of the skills that we had, and importantly, the more and more we outsource clinical decisions making, there is also a possibility that we will lose cognitive skills, right? So I'm just adding this layer of complexity to us, that as we outsource a lot of this information, we may think it's repetitive, but that repetitive improves us, right? So some of the nuancing skills that we have are also going to be deteriorating over a period of time. So I thought I'd just stop this thank you, but this is another thing that everyone wants to keep in mind. So once in a while, go take up the X-ray and read it to yourself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was good. I think it has really, I mean, practice has really evolved. And you are using AI, but I think we are all yet to adapt it in many different aspects of clinical practice. So, Dr. Alok, last question for you is, can you share some easy tips? Because there was a lot of interest in today's webinar, and we remain grateful to all who joined, and also want them to register for Dtechcon 2025 happening in Jaipur in May this year. But before that, if you can shed some light or some easy tips for physicians who, even diabetologists who want to adapt some part of AI into practice, how can they do that?
I'll take it to real basics. When I interact with physicians, many of them sort of find chat GPT or perplexity like sort of a glamorous thing, and they want to know what is NLP, what is transformer AI, and what is exactly generative AI, what is it all about. So and they are really asking me questions about how do we get comfortable. Very simple. When I started, ask chat GPT, kindly explain yourself. It's like, talking to an intelligent kid of yours. Kindly tell me, why do you want a chocolate? What chocolate do you like? Just go to ChatGPT, tell me, teach me prompt engineering, teach me NLP, teach me basics of AI, tell me how do I interact with you. Try doing that. It gives you wonderful nuances and literally handholds you and walks you through. Try Copilot, AI tool by Microsoft. Try Perplexity, try Claude, Sonnet. There's some wonderful tools. Just ask the basic questions. And like we have learned clinical medicine, we the best way to learn clinical medicine is not by reading Harrison, but by going to the wards and seeing specifically what you read in Harrison. So when you face a problem, come to your AI engine, ask them, I'm facing this problem with this patient. Can you guide me what is to be done? Get the answer, talk to your colleagues, talk to your peers, get their answers, and you will start understanding how to generate prompts. So just one simple quick thing here. A lot of in output that you get depends on what prompt you're giving. I'm not talking of commercial products like Sugar IQ and all. I'm coming to real basics here. So just as you have a RMO or you have a colleague or you have a student, the bright kid on the block, you can't get the right answers unless you ask the right questions to your nurses and your RMOs. So unless you put in a right prompt, you won't get the full mileage out of a AI tool.
So
So
we
you
are
have to learn prompt
coming down
engineering.
to, sorry to interrupt, but are we like really coming down to just the use of Chat GPT to begin with? Is there something else also besides that? Um, let's hear that.
You can go for specific products for AI meant for diabetologists, but then you'll have to spend money. It becomes expensive. You need to
Hmm.
get registered, and then there's always a learning curve which is specific for that. See, ChatGPT has a generalized LLM. It is not designed for medical LLM, so it is prone to hallucinations and errors because it collects its database from Microsoft Azure, which is a collection of all kind of questions that you ask on Google and other things. So if you want
Okay.
a specific product which gives you more accuracy, there is going to be a learning curve. There is going to be an expense. You need to get trained into that. So that is something that you can do. And generally, these are tools which are utilized by institutions like Mayo's Clinic and Birmingham hospitals and other where they're using it regularly, like the sepsis model and the AKI model in Mayo for diabetic patients. But in your own personal clinic, if you want to invest a lot of money and buy such models, I think it may not be a practicality for each individual doctor. So I generally recommend, and I personally feel comfortable that on an individual person, you can go for these open AI tools, buy a simple subscription of $20 per month, and get comfortable. That is a way to start. Once you become a little at ease and you know how to deal with an AI model, then you can probably go for more finished and developed products and start working on that. If you want to do drug development systems, you want to do research, you want to publish papers, then you can actually buy these polished products which are meant for that purpose. I'm keeping my answer
Great.
short because we are running out of time. So
We unfortunately are. I think we could actually go on and on discussing this because it's such a riveting topic and, so much interest right now in it. So thank you again, each and every one of you, Dr. Krishna Seshadri, sir. I know it was so taxing to even find time to speak to you for the webinar. So I'm so glad you could make it today. Very thankful to Dr. Santosh Dikshit as well, and Dr. Amit Day and Dr. Alok Modi. Very, very thankful. And we are going to pick your brains again for the series of webinars before Dtechcon. And with that, kudos to Dr. Mithun Bhatia. Of course, is Dr. Banshi Sabu here? Dr. Banshi Sabu, sir, thank you. As always, your leadership, your guidance, and your encouragement leave us, very very motivated to do more work for different associations. So thank you again for being there throughout and always encouraging us. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Mithun, for
Purvi.
being there.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Purvi. We need to thank you also. So thank you, Purvi, so much, and RX as well.
Thank you, everyone.
RX
Thank
events,
you,
I
Purvi.
troubled you all a lot today. Sorry about that, but thank you. And above all, Dr. Rakesh Parikh, the flag bearer of these DTech dialogues.
And
Thank you.
organizing secretary for Dtechcon.
Yes.
That you have to keep on reminding.
Before you close, can I say one sentence, just one sentence?
Please, please.
So, for a lot of audiences, today's discussion might have been overwhelming. There were so many terminologies many people are not aware of. So I requested Purvi that let's keep the next Dtech dialogues on very basics of how to start using ChatGPT for the people who have never used it. So let us promise all the audiences that we'll do that, and it will be from the basics, starting with everything. So don't be overwhelmed that this is not for me. It's all for all of us. We'll do it together.
Rakesh, can we post these two video and these two talks on our website also?
It will be there. It will be there.
Okay.
It will be there. Yeah, yeah. It will be there.
Thank you, Krishna boss. Thank you, Amit, Alok. Thanks, Mithun, Rakesh. And a lot of thanks to Purvi.
Thank you. Good evening, all.